Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Drive Home with me. And I have a question from somebody in my stories that they wanted me to talk about, but I'm not going to put some 8-minute video on Instagram or TikTok because I think people will watch the first minute or two and keep on scrolling. So if you guys want to check out the full video of this, you guys can go to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Fear of the Ears Dog Sports. So the question I got today was, or what the topic rather, what they wanted me to talk about, and this is a former agility student of mine, was trialing puppies like they're adults. So like trialing with puppies, like I think that agility is actually really good about keeping true puppies out of trials, because in AKC, I believe UKI as well, you can trial your young dog at 15 months old in their classes, in their novice classes rather. But USDA, which is my place I play with in agility the most, they have an 18-month age limit for regular classes. Some trials will have intro classes, which is the beginner level classes with a much longer time limit on it, and you can jump whatever height you want. So if you have like a dog that would be jumping like 20 inches as an adult, you can jump from 12, so there aren't any refusals, like there's, those are baby classes. So with obedience and rally and AKC, I don't know about the other venues like CDSP, UKC, WCRL, rally. You can actually trial a dog at 6 months. Yeah, I'm kind of like about that. You can get a canine good citizen on a 6-month-old puppy, but too, and I'll give my thoughts about that in a second. So what am I going to say? So with agility, I didn't do agility with Sam because he was an orthopedic mess, like I had mentioned in one of my intro videos on my Patreon. And but with Lars, he was my first agility dog. He wasn't ready to trial. I wasn't ready to trial when he was 18 months old or 15 months old. That would have been a absolute catastrophe. I started trialing him in agility when he was almost 3. So, but Ocean, on the other hand, I did bring him out at 18 months. And Jonesy, I did intro classes with at 15 months. And Gracie, I did some beginner speed stakes at 15 months. So, it's one thing to trial puppies, in a super easy class with low expectations. And so I feel that if you go out and you trial with a puppy and have, just say, hey, this is bringing experience, this is mileage, and not put the pressure on them to perform like a 3-year-old dog, I don't really have a problem with that. I think that, go out and do it like for exhibition only, for FEO. So I think that you can go out there with a toy and have some fun and just get them used to the ring experience and the trial experience. As I said on Patreon and some of my other videos on here, ever since COVID, doing run-throughs and matches and, dropping classes and all that other fun stuff to get your dog out into different environments, which I believe is an absolute must if you're going to start talking about and thinking about trialing your dog. Ever since COVID, those things are not really around anymore. It's really, really, really hard to find drop-in classes. Or like, if you're like me and you got a job, I have a really hard time getting to run-throughs and drop-in classes because they're held on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And they're usually like a good 40 minutes away. So I can't take time off from working to do that. So I think that, using a trial in agility and doing like a intro class with a toy doing FEO and just using it as like a drop-in or a run-through, an expensive one though, I don't think I really have a problem with that. Like with me, with Gracie and Jones, trialing at 15 months old, they, you know, Jonesy wasn't 100% certain, you know, with his, oh my God, with his contact criteria. So I kind of just did snooker and jumpers with him, and I think I did some gamblers. But at least in gamblers, I can choose what equipment I'm going to do, like, in that run. And in starters and intro, they usually don't have contact equipment in the gamble. So I was choosing classes that were just jumps, tunnels, and weave pulls, and that was it, you know, or with jumpers and, you know, USDA and UKI with their speed stakes, it's just jumps and tunnels. So that's what I chose to do with my young dogs. With Ocean, I did jumpers, I did some standard. They didn't really have any of the game classes in AKC, and I hadn't really done much USDA with him when I got him out. But Ocean was a less confident dog when he was younger, and he was kind of like a mama's boy, and he wasn't the freight train that he turned into when he was only 15 months old. That came when he was like 2.5. So with Ocean, you know, we kind of did our thing. I didn't really ever worry about him like killing himself, and I didn't really put a lot of pressure on him because I knew he was only 15 months old. And so yeah, but here's my thing about doing obedience with a dog who's still, you know, a very young dog. And me personally, I don't think I would trial a dog in true competition obedience until they're like 3. And you know, I even think beginner novice, I'd be hard pressed to do that with a dog who's under the age of 2.5. Because with obedience, there's a lot behind the scenes that you have to work on your dog with, whether it be focus, whether it be learning to perform without a lot of verbal feedback. And in competition obedience, you really want your dog to understand that when you are quiet, they're right. And you know, with puppies and stuff like that, they just don't, that foundation hasn't been laid in time. Rally, like I brought Lars out in Rally at 15 months. I think I did Rally with Ocean at 15 months too. I'm cool with that because you can talk to your dog, you can give them verbal support, you can pat your leg, yada yada yada, and you can do all that stuff. I don't have a problem with Rally with a younger dog, because I think that, you know, that is mostly fun and less pressure. So I think that Rally's appropriate for a dog who's, I'm going to say, probably 15 months old. I personally wouldn't trial a dog in anything under 15 months old. I don't think that they have, I think that their young brains would have a hard time with the environment, the dogs, you know, kind of, you know, staying engaged with you for that long. I mean, like, that stuff is all trained before you know, and you know, engagement with you should be something that should be worked on before you really go into a trial situation. You know, with WCRL Rally, and which is USDA's version of Rally, and CDSP obedience, you can use food rewards at the end of an exercise. So I probably would be a little bit more into doing that with a younger dog who hasn't been really worked in obedience for a significant period of time, before you trial. So those are kind of like my ideas on, trialing young dogs. So, but then you got these people too that, and I kind of walk this line a little bit with myself. I kind of walk this line of like, oh, I gotta get my dog out right away. So, you know, yeah, like sometimes, you might have to check your own self, for the reasons of why you are entering your super young dog into a trial setting. I mean, if you're looking to cue, I'm gonna say if you're going into a trial setting with a dog who is probably under 18 months, you should probably expect not to cue and just use it as mileage and just use it as experience, like ring experience. So, truth be told, I did use Rally as ring experience for Ocean and Lars to get into that environment and realize that we're going to be doing something together. And so when it came time for them to do agility, Lars doing his competition obedience, like he was used to that, and Ocean was used to that kind of trial environment when, I was doing agility with him. So I will say that, I think that trials really should be, 18 months, for Rally and agility. I think that's okay. I think obedience, I think you're really pushing the envelope if you enter a dog underneath the age of like 2.5. I'm going to say 2.5, not 2. And then I'm going to say this, there are people out there who are phenomenal trainers, like phenomenal. Like they're going to forget more than I've ever known. And I'm going to use this one lady, for example, in New England, who has pretty much put an otch on every dog she's ever owned. And she had a flat coat that she ended up putting an otch on at 2 years old. I mean, that is literally unheard of. She had some personal things going on in her life that were devastating, and so she literally threw herself into training that dog and putting an otch on him at 2. But I'm going to say that is the absolute, that doesn't happen, except for in this one instance. And, who this woman is, if anyone was going to do it, it was this woman who did it. And, like I said, she's put an otch on every single dog that she's owned, Master Hunters, Mocks, all, she can do it. And so, just because, you can go out and trial your dog, especially in obedience at a younger age, doesn't necessarily mean that you should, unless you're at that level where, you're going to you've put a notch on every dog that you've ever owned. So, so that's kind of like my take on trialing dogs who are, who are younger, like they're adults. And, but also too, you have to have the dog, there might be those dogs out there who can do that, and with that trainer and the flat coat with the otch at 2 years old, that was literally the perfect storm of the dog that could do it and the trainer that could do it. And not, I'm probably going to say that's probably she's like the 0.1% of dog people who could actually pull that off with that dog. And you guys are going to keep hearing me talk about train the dog in front of you. So you have to be realistic about what your dog is able to handle. Just because you want to go out and cue in obedience or agility with a 15-month-old dog, doesn't mean that the dog actually can do that. Does your dog have the resiliency to handle that pressure of the trial? Does that dog have the resiliency, or that puppy have the resiliency to not have feedback from you at that stage of the game? So does that dog have the ability to take responsibility for doing a job that you are not babysitting? And absolutely, there are some dogs out there and puppies out there who are wiser beyond their months, and they have the temperament and they have the personality where they can pull that off. But I'm going to say again, that's probably like the 1% of the young dogs out there. So I'm going to say, if think about the reasons why you're taking that puppy out there and trialing them like an adult. I think that sometimes people get into their own heads, and egos get in the way and stuff like that, and if you are going to do that and use, you know, an agility trial with an FEO run in starters or intro or beginners, and use it like a training, you know, like a training thing that you're going to spend, you know, an entry fee on, hey man, rock on. You know, that's cool. If you're going to go out there and take that puppy and, you know, do that class and expect them to cue and hold all their contact criteria at like 15 months, you know, I think that's a little bit unrealistic. And like I said, you know, I personally would not show a dog in competition obedience until they're at least 2.5, you know, just because that environment's like a pressure cooker. And there are a lot of dogs who actually don't really like that kind of environment because the handler's uptight, the environment's uptight, and yeah, so you have to have a mature dog to be able to handle, you know, competition obedience and do well. So, you know, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about canine good citizen with a super young dog. You can do his canine good citizen test with a 6-month-old puppy, but I'm going to say that the AKC does recommend that the dog get tested at a later age. I do feel that it is an exceptional puppy who can pass the CGC at 6 months, because again, you have no food rewards and there's a lot of distractions and a lot of, you know, people and dogs and separation, the supervised separation for 3 minutes. I think that most puppies can't handle that. I also think too, if you have a puppy at 6 months old that can handle that situation, they're probably, you know, they might change, you know, with their personality by the time they're a year old. I think that, you know, 10 months old, I've put CGCs on Ocean and Gracie at 10 months old. Lara's got it at a year old. Jonesy hasn't gotten his yet. And Sammy got it at 6. No, maybe 5. So, I'm going to say, if you're thinking about CGCs, I'm going to say that, you know, if you really want to get the CGC, wait till they're at least 10 months old. You know, if you want to take the CGC and take the test and just see where you are, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that way you know exactly what you need to work on. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. Thanks for joining me with drive home with me. I got a half-hour drive, and I'm just kind of barely over half of it. So, yeah, so thanks for being a free member. Thanks for hanging out for the entire time. This is great. So yeah, catch you later.